Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Earl.
And I'm Will Garcia.
And together we're the Hoops Guys. And continuing our 2014-2015 NBA season previews today, we will be discussing the Los Angeles Lakers. So, Will, tell me a little bit about how their season went.
They struggled. They struggled pretty mightily, finishing 27-55 in a super stacked Western Conference. Kobe went down, Nash went down, and a bunch of free agent dudes on one-year contracts came in.
Pretty much.
So, yeah, it was a really rough year. They were, I mean, you know your year is rough, and no disrespect to the guy, but you know your year is rough when everyone from Kent Bazemore to Robert Sacre is having a career year on your team.
Yes.
So the good news for them was that it wasn't all for naught. They got the 7th pick in the draft. It's taking Julius Randle, who we're going to talk about later on in the preview. So that was one good thing. What are some other good things that happened for the Lakers last year?
Well, they shot a lot of threes, and they made them pretty well. They converted those threes pretty well. They were tied for 10th in corner three true shooting attempts, which is a stat from Ian Levy's awesome XPPS numbers over at Nylon Calculus. We can't pimp those guys enough. They're awesome.
Yeah,
check them out.
We really can't. We pimp them so much that they're going to have to send us a coat.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't want to have to slap Ian around if we don't get some swag, at least.
Exactly.
They were also 6th in above the break 3-point true shooting attempts, and they converted their corner threes at a rate that ranked 7th in the league, and their above the break threes at a rate that ranked 4th. So They took a lot of threes and they hit them. They also were 9th in the league in terms of getting shots in the paint.
Yep. Yeah, that they did do very well from there.
Yeah.
You mentioned from 3 guys like Jody Meeks and even Nick Young.
Yep.
They had pretty good years.
Even your boy Ryan Kelly.
Oh yeah, R. Kelly. I believe he can fly.
Yeah.
In the proper circumstance.
Even Kendall Marshall, who we'll talk about a little bit later, also showed off an improved 3-point shot. So the threes were there for the Lakers last year. And they did a few good things defensively, too. They didn't really send opponents to the free throw line much. They prevented a lot of above-the-break threes. Shots in the restricted area, paint, in the paint, not necessarily at the rim, but in the paint. They dissuaded shots there, and they contested shots well that were taken there. And they contested corner threes well. I think they were 4th in defensive corner 3-point percentage last year, and they were 5th in opponents' free throw per field goal attempt. So they did a decent job of at least not fouling too much and defending corner threes and above the break threes.
Absolutely. And on an individual level, a lot of guys, as I alluded to earlier, really had career years here.
Definitely.
Nick Young, a fairly polarizing player.
Yeah.
But, for all of his weaknesses, he did have his best year in terms of being able to score efficiently, and was really one of the shot creators on this team. And he did a pretty solid job of getting the ball into the basket. Doing a great job with above-the-break threes, especially, was one good thing he did really well. Mm-hmm. Another player who improved significantly, especially with his game off the dribble, and as a defender and as a finisher, is Jody Meeks.
Yes.
And, he really took that spot-up specialist label and kind of broke it last year. With the things he was able to do on both ends of the floor, he really... I'm not going to say he's Tony Allen, but he improved on that end of the floor, and he improved as a shot creator, and he really had a very solid year that he was able to turn into a really solid contract in the offseason.
Yes. You're probably happy, though, that he's with your Pistons this next season, and hopefully he can carry on this production for Detroit next year.
Absolutely. And Ryan Kelly had a solid year. I think he got snubbed from the all-rookie teams. I think he did.
I know.
I haven't shut up about it. It's pretty bad. But, operating down low and bumping and grinding in the low post, I believe he can fly. No. The R. Kelly references aside, he had a good year shooting the ball. He had, I think I'm pretty sure he was top 5 for rookies in three-point percentage out of rookies who actually got minutes.
Nice.
Yeah, shot at about 35%-ish. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I probably should. Let me see here. 34%. Ooh, my bad.
For a rookie big man, that's not that bad.
For a rookie, yeah, that is really solid. And for the minutes he played, his scoring and what he was able to do on the offensive side of the floor really helped them out, especially in creating spacing. And then 2 more big dudes, Jordan Hill and Robert Sacre. They were pretty solid on as good rebounders, solid rim deterrents, good at contesting shots. They proved themselves both to be pretty valuable.
Yeah.
And then another guy who had a rookie year is your boy Kendall Marshall, and
yes.
I'm just gonna let you talk about him because he is your guy.
I'm really big on decision making and facilitation and court vision. So Kendall Marshall is a guy I like, and it was nice to see him actually be able to get playing time.
Yeah,
because he improved his shot a lot.
He did.
You got to give Kendall a lot of credit for really working on that because he shot the ball well enough that he was able to get minutes on a team that then allowed him to impact that team with his facilitation skills. And he wound up finishing second in the league in assist percentage and averaging 8.8 assists per game. Kendall stepped his game up, and I'm looking forward. I'm just like you with Jody Meeks. I'm hoping this next year he can continue that.
Exactly. He did have a great year. His shot, I mean, he still has a slow-ish release.
Which is a bit of a problem. He's still somewhat of like a slow set shooter. But when he has some space, he's hitting it at a much more consistent rate.
That's good. One thing, I was looking at that in his D-League performance, and it seemed to carry over from there. Yeah. He shot the ball well in the D-League too, so I'm not surprised that the ball found the bucket, or the ball found when he went up to the Lakers. Then another one of your boys.
Yeah, he got a lot of flack the past couple of years in LA and just in general. But Pau Gasol continued to be Pau Gasol, and in my opinion was really good. Yeah. He didn't have great numbers per se, but he's still one of the most skilled bigs in the entire world. And I think he was misutilized a little bit by D'Antoni in the Lakers. But he considering how he was misused, I thought he still played pretty well, being able to score from the post and face-ups, pretty decent rebounding. And he gets a lot of flack, but his man and team defense is a lot better than people give him credit for. At least recently.
Yeah. No, as a guy who can move the ball well from the post and be a very effective post-shot creator, and as well as you mentioned facing up, Pau Gasol is such a valuable player, and there's a reason that he gets the big bucks.
Yep, and there's a reason that the Lakers went to 3 straight finals after trading for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're good. He's good.
But things weren't all roses and rainbows for the Lakers last year.
Yeah, if things were all roses and rainbows, they wouldn't have gone 27-55.
Yeah.
There was a lot of ugly.
Yes. So, despite Sacre, Powell, and Hill doing pretty decently on the boards and at least contesting shots decently, they struggled a lot on the offensive and defensive boards. And they offensively, they didn't get to the free throw line much or the rim.
Mm-hmm.
And they settled for a lot of mid-range shots. They were 22nd in mid-range field goal percentage. So they took a lot of them, and they didn't shoot them that well. They were dead last in offensive rebound rate.
Yep.
22nd in free throw per field goal attempt. And a pretty bad 25th in terms of shot attempts in the restricted area near the rim. So they had some problems. Maybe it was a slight overemphasis on threes that they didn't really get to the rim, and we'll talk a little bit more later on about how Byron Scott wants to change this up a little bit. And defensively, beyond struggling on the defensive glass, that they gave up a decent amount of corner threes and shots at the rim, and they didn't really force any turnovers. Opponents, in terms of opponents' effective field goal percentage, they were 22nd last year.
Yeah.
They were 28th in opponents' turnover rate. Once again, just like offensive rebounding, they were dead last in defensive rebound rate. And they were also dead last in terms of true shot attempts by opponents at the rim in the restricted area. So they gave up a lot of shots at the rim.
Exactly, and like what you said with effective field goal percentage, turnovers, and defensive rebounding, at the end of the day, if your opponents are putting the ball in the basket, they're getting more opportunities to do, and they're getting more opportunities to do so because you're not rebounding well or forcing steals. You're gonna lose.
Yeah.
And speaking of losing Steve Nash and Kobe Bryant this year due to injury, where they combined to play 24 games. That's a massive setback.
Huge.
Yeah. Steve Nash, even though he's, reaching AARP age, he still has so many valuable skills as a like you mentioned, a facilitator and as a shooter and as a guy who can just make awesome reads.
Yes.
And really run an offense. He's still really valuable. And they lost him. So that didn't help much. Kendall Marshall did an admirable job filling in for Nash's shoes as well as we could reasonably expect anyone to. But it still hurt.
I'll put it this way. Mm-hmm. As much as Kendall Marshall and Nick Young had career years and played pretty well, all things considered, when you're substituting Kendall Marshall and Nick Young for Steve Nash and Kobe Bryant, respectively, you're gonna have a bad time.
Let's just put it this way. Kendall Marshall probably idolizes Steve Nash, and Nick Young probably idolizes Kobe.
Yes. Yeah.
You are getting the younger, you're getting like the younger, cheaper substitutes, essentially. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Being a younger, cheaper substitute of Steve Nash or Kobe Bryant. If you're a poor man's Steve Nash or a poor man's Kobe Bryant, that's a compliment. Because that means you're probably still doing pretty dang well. But, that was a serious drop-off for them. Especially considering how good Kobe is as a shot creator and someone who can really, I don't want to say operate without an offensive system, because that's super flawed and super, super wrong. But as someone who can do good things when that breaks down, which it kind of did a lot for the Lakers this year.
Yeah. Kobe's a nice release valve to have in terms of being able to create shots when
he's a good guy to bail you
falls
out.
apart.
He's also a guy who sometimes enables stuff to fall apart. But for the most part, he is a good guy to have when things get bailed out. Another problem for this team was that they lacked a true rim protector. Jordan Hill and Robert Sacre did do a good job of contesting shots at the basket, And Chris Kaman did have another solid year when he did get to be on the floor. But there really wasn't anyone where if you're a shooting guard on this team, let's say, and you're trying to get to the basket, there really wasn't anybody, as my earbud falls out.
Nobody you were afraid of.
Exactly. There wasn't anyone who you were, getting nightmares at night that, I'm going to get blocked.
Yeah. There's a reason they were dead last in terms of opponent shots at the rim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like either those two big men, or any of those big men mentioned, had a rough year or a bad year, but more so just that none of them really are the kind of guy who you can expect to really protect that rim.
Yeah.
And if you don't have rim protection, your perimeter defense needs to be really solid. And the Lakers didn't really have anybody to do that last year.
Nope.
Jody Meeks improved, but ultimately at the end of the day, if you don't have any rim protectors and you're out there running Kendall Marshall, who I love and Josh loves, but let's face it, the guy isn't Chris Paul out there on the other end of the floor.
No.
Jody Meeks and Nick Young, you're gonna, and you don't have rim protection. You are going to get destroyed by offenses, and that's kind of what happened.
Yes.
The good news for the Lakers, though, is that they did bring in some additions, some really nice pieces. So why don't you touch base on some of those?
Yeah. So they won the
particularly the guy who you're wearing his jersey or his
yes.
shirt.
As you can see, I'm a Jeremy Lin fan.
I am too.
In fact, have a framed Linsanity thing above my desk. And I think they did a great job in picking up Lin and how they did it. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for Jeremy to play well in a major media market prior to becoming a free agent after this season. We all know what happened the last time that scenario played out. He'll have to contend with Nash as a starter, and we've kind of seen Byron Scott already has kind of said Nash is going to be the starter most of the time. But with Nash's health woes over the past couple of years, I think Lin's going to get a lot of minutes. And I hate to say it because I know how much Lakers fans love the guy, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Kobe miss some games or at least transition a few more of his touches to more post touches and less perimeter action.
Yeah.
Which should cede some of the ball handling duties to either Nash or Lin. And if Lin's in, then that's going to give him some more opportunities to be a vital offensive piece for the team. And, the big knocks on Lin back in the Linsanity days was, he's not a great shooter and he turns the ball over too much. But last year with the Rockets in a more tertiary role, he had the career bests across the field in terms of shooting percentages. He shot 44.6 from the field, 35.8 from three, and 82.3 from the free throw line. All of his percentages have been increasing over his career so far. And he reduced his turnover rate both of the last two seasons. So he's gotten better since Linsanity.
Yeah, and that's nuts.
And I think he just didn't really have a great opportunity in Houston because are you going to take the ball out of the hands of James Harden and put Harden off ball, or are you going to put Jeremy Lin off ball and give the ball to Harden? So
right, and I think that this year it could ultimately wind up being a similar situation with Kobe.
Yeah, it could.
But at the end of the day, I think that you're right in that this could be a really solid year for Lin. We'll touch base on that a little bit later.
Yes.
I see that they also picked up a guy that you think might be on the best contract in all of basketball.
He's at least the best free agent value contract this offseason, in my opinion. They picked up Ed Davis, which if you guys watched their preseason game so far, Ed has been impactful. People seem to forget what he did in Toronto because he was kind of buried in Memphis, and rightly so because we're talking about Zebo and Marc Gasol ahead of him. But he's very capable of being a productive big. His contract was only $2 million over 2 seasons.
Isn't the last year a team option?
I'm not 100% sure, but I wouldn't be surprised. So, I mean, we're talking about a ridiculous steal of a deal here. And he's going to be way more valuable than that would kind of entail, generally speaking.
Yeah, he's a definite ramen noodle all-star.
Yes, he's definitely a ramen noodle all-star, which is something we'll be discussing a lot more on this channel in the future. But I think he's going to be really helpful with those rim protection and rebounding issues that the Lakers had last year. No offense to Sacre or Jordan Hill or even Powell, but he's going to be a little bit more of a rim deterrent than those guys are, and he's a very, very solid rebounder. And I think if he gets some playing time, which isn't a given considering this big rotation, but if he does, I think he can put up some really good numbers, and I think he'd be a really good pick-and-roll partner with Lin.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of young big dudes,
yes,
they got another young big dude in the draft. His name's Julius Randle. And his claim to fame is basically being a offensive rebounding, glass-eating, just beast of a human being.
He munches the glass.
He munches it, he chews it, he eats it, he lives it, he breathes it, he sleeps it, he bathes in rebounds. That is literally, yeah. That is how this guy plays ball, and getting good positioning, operating mostly on the block, and just straight up bully ball. It'll be interesting to see if it can carry over. I think that the way he's built is going to allow him to maybe still apply some of that to the pro level, but he is going to have to probably rely more on a refined post game or a refined face-up game, which he really didn't show at Kentucky.
To be fair, I mean, several of my scouting friends who watch high school basketball were talking up his ability to face up and his ability to kind of operate by breaking down his defender off the bounce and being able to space pretty decently, at least on the high school level. I'm not entirely sure what happened on the collegiate level. I don't know if that was just a big enough leap in terms of the defenses, or I think it might have been just kind of a poor environment for him in that respect.
With spacing and stuff,
there wasn't a whole lot of floor spacing. So and in college, of course, there's a lot more zone-heavy defenses. Mm-hmm. So I think there was a lot of congestion in the paint and tighter driving lanes. So I think that might have impacted it a little bit. I don't know if he's going to be able to show those skills that caught the high school scouts' eyes on the NBA level yet. We'll have to see. But at the bare minimum, he's going to help improve that Lakers rebounding, which is something they desperately need.
Exactly. Yeah, I might not have been as high on as most people on Randle in this draft, but I'll come out and say that he does have a very, especially on the rebounding, especially just as a rebounder, that can be really valuable just right there. And the guy's, 19?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not expecting him to really be a fully developed product yet. He still has a lot of time to grow and develop that post-up game and that face-up game that everyone was raving about a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Another player that they did add this year, and I'm surprised we haven't mentioned him, but we're on kind of a big roll here, and we forgot the biggest big of all the bigs, Carlos Boozer.
Yeah.
It's a downgrade from Powell.
Yes.
And there's no debating that. But he is going to be a good rebounder, and he's going to have an interesting pick-and-pop game.
Yeah. Him and Ed Davis especially should be really nice pick-and-roll players with Lin and Nash, and even Kobe, if those latter two are healthy enough.
Absolutely. And then there's a post scorer. He's going to come in and be one of the best on the team. I mean, of course, there's Kobe, but
Yeah. He'll be the second best post scorer behind Kobe. All these bigs that we're talking about, with Pau gone now, Kobe is clearly the best post scorer, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him shift a fair number of his possessions more to the post,
Yes.
where his footwork and the fact that he's being guarded by wings, he's going to be able to take advantage of that and might have slightly less wear and tear on his body than, operating primarily as a shot creation, dribble penetrator on the perimeter. So,
no, absolutely, I totally agree with you on that. And then the last player that they added, just give a quick mention on Jordan Clarkson. I don't think he's going to get that much run this year, but he might be able to get some minutes.
I mean, if Nash and Kobe are healthy, he's probably not going to get many minutes. But if they go down, he's a guy that we're going to see probably a decent amount of, and who knows? Like last year, maybe he'll have a pretty good season.
Yeah, he might have another breakout for this team.
Yeah.
Speaking of people who broke out for this team, Jordan Clarkson might have a year similar to Kent Bazemore.
Yes.
Somebody that the Lakers lost this year. He saw his minutes more than quadruple.
Yes.
When he became a Laker. That says a lot about this team.
Uh-huh.
But he had some of the best shooting percentages he's ever had, and really showed what he could do as a scorer.
Yeah.
So it was pretty good. That was a pretty solid year for him. Another player who had a pretty solid, I don't want to say a career year, because of how much smaller the role was in LA than it was LA, but Chris Kaman.
Yeah.
He had a solid year as a bench big dude when he got run, and he was able to turn that into a pretty cool role in Portland. He's going to be able to help them out a lot.
Yeah. He put up, on per 36-minute basis, he put up career best numbers in points and assists, and second best in his career in terms of rebounds per 36 minutes. So Kaman had a really good year, all things considered.
Yes. And then obviously players we talked quite a bit about, Pau and Kendall and Jody Meeks, they all left to the Bulls, Bucks, and Pistons respectively.
Yes.
So we already covered, I think we pretty much ran the gamut on those three players.
Those guys were covered. One thing to note, and shout out to John Schulman for his numbers on this, but he had this interesting thing that kind of showed the number of the percentage of returning minutes from last year. Basically kind of a continuity type measurement. And with all of these roster changes, the Lakers had the third most roster turnover and are only returning about 47% of their player minutes from last year. So continuity will not be a strength this year.
No, especially with a new coach.
Yes, and especially with
a new
coach,
Kobe,
so.
essentially, for the everyone to get reused to and readjust to playing with.
Yes.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of adjustments this year, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see how things like a rotations break down, and to see who really fills what roles. Kind of like last year in a way.
Yeah.
So one thing that shouldn't be surprising with all of that turnover is that their possession delta, which is a stat that I kind of came up with.
Awesome stat that you came up with.
Yeah, okay. It's an awesome stat that I came up with. And it this is just a quick look at what percentage of their or not what percentage, but how many possessions that they gave up in free agency versus how many they brought in.
Yep.
And they're at minus 19. So this means that some people probably are going to be in some expanded roles, which, again, shouldn't really be all that surprising.
Although I would expect Kobe to eat up a fair number of those.
Kobe got counted into that with his performance when he was injured.
Yeah, but that was when he was injured. If he's healthy, I'm sure he'll eat a decent amount of that. Maybe not nearly all of that, but between him and maybe Boozer and Randall, I think those will be covered pretty easily.
Yeah, and it really, a lot of this depends on who gets a shot, who gets the chance to start. You know,
Yeah,
Ed
that
Davis
big
might have a bigger
rotation.
role. Lynn might have a bigger role.
Yeah.
It depends. Byron Scott has some choices for how he wants those to break down. So why don't you tell them about how the rest differential looks, Josh?
Okay, so rest differential is a kind of stat that I came up with that was basically just designed to kind of get a cursory look at any difference between them and their opponents over the course of the season in terms of rest. So how many 4 and 5 days, how many 3 games in 4 days, and how many road back-to-backs do they have over the course of the season, and do their opponents have, and what's the difference? And so the Lakers over the course of the season have a -12 rest differential, which just means that on the whole, their opponents are going to be a little more rested and probably a little more consistent with their performance than the Lakers might be. So the Lakers are a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of rest. Not as bad as the Cavs, who had -21, but they're going to be a little rest deficient compared to their opponents over the course of the season.
Right on, right on. So if you've been watching our previous team previews, you know that we have a little segment we like to do called 5 Questions. It basically is what it sounds like. I asked Josh some questions, he asked me some questions, and it's a way for us to touch base on things that wouldn't have otherwise maybe even fit in.
Yeah.
So one of the big multi-million-dollar question, as you said, for our
$24 million question.
Yeah, plus endorsements.
Yes.
Is can Kobe play at the same level as before the Achilles injury?
I'm inclined to say no. That said, if anybody's able to come back from such a devastating NBA injury, and I mean, pretty much anybody who's had an Achilles injury in the NBA, it pretty much ended their career. If anybody can do it, it's going to be Kobe. But that said, I don't know if he'll be operating the same way as he did before. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think we're going to see him shift a little bit more to post touches and have that be kind of the core of his offensive role than, the kind of bringing the ball up the court, breaking down the defense from the top of the key or the sides. And being kind of that perimeter shot creator. He'll still do that, but I think the breakdown of his shot attempts, or at least his touches, are going to shift a little bit more towards the post than the perimeter. And I think that will help him continue to be productive at a high level because Kobe has insanely good footwork. And like we mentioned earlier, he's the best post scorer on the Lakers. Yeah. And most wings aren't used to playing post defense. So right. Kobe should be able to be pretty successful doing that.
Absolutely. Do I think that he's going to be playing at the same level as before the injury? No.
Yeah.
Because you have the effects of regular aging being multiplied by a freaking Achilles injury.
And the fact that he's been in the league so long, like basketball miles, too, not just his age.
Right. So there's that going on. Do I think he's still going to be an effective primary scoring option? Yeah. Do I expect him to be dropping 27, 28 a game? No. Even on a team that's a little bit less talented than previous Laker rosters, and even considering that his role might be similar to what it was during those prime years for Kobe. At the end of the day, this is a really, really rough injury on a not-so-young player. Having said that, Kobe does have so many other skills that he can rely on. It's not like his game is being predicated on athleticism anymore.
No.
It's not like it's Froby out there.
No, it's not Froby.
This is a different player and very equipped to be able to still be able to positively contribute in a major way to this basketball team.
Yep.
But if people are coming in expecting an MVP season, they're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
But speaking of potentially disappointed, I'm going to be disappointed if we don't see Linsanity again.
Well, you know my answer to this. I think the environment is set up more akin to his time with the Knicks than it is to his time with the Rockets.
Agreed.
Just because he's not, like I said, Kobe is probably going to miss more time than most people expect. He's not going to play 82 games, I don't think.
No.
The Achilles injury is really tough to get back from, and like we said, not only is he 36, but he's got a lot of miles on his legs over his career. That said, I think Lynn's going to get a much better opportunity in LA than he did in Houston. It might not be as consistent a through line an opportunity as maybe he had in that stretch with the Knicks, but I do believe we'll get a chance to see Lynn drop some pretty interesting numbers in several games. And given that he's in LA, I think we could see a return to kind of the maybe not as big media kind of tornado of excitement about it, but I think we're going to see another Linsanity.
Yeah, this is a perfect place for him in a contract year.
Yes, exactly.
If he wants to get paid, he's in a good place to do it.
Yes.
But like you alluded to, the guy got better. He is better now than he was in New York. I know it sounds kind of weird because the box score stats wouldn't necessarily indicate that. But he has improved significantly as a player.
Yep.
Much more reliable shooter, better decision making, better at taking care of the ball.
And he's getting better at going left.
Defensively and athleticism. Yep, there's that too. I think he's gotten more athletic and is a better defender now.
Yeah.
I think he's really improved his game quite a bit from even New York. So I wouldn't be surprised at all for him to wind up as the second option on this team. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he did a damn good job in doing so.
Agreed.
Having said that, there are other ways this could play out. You know, there is a guy named Steve Nash. Kobe could still, Kobe is going to be ball dominant.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he's Kobe. He can do that. And Carlos Boozer also is the mouth to feed as well. So it'll be interesting to see how much Byron Scott trusts
that'll be big.
Yeah, basically somebody who was a sixth man last year. But I could see for the start of the year, it maybe not going that way. But come January, this team's going to be desperate. And Jeremy Lin is going to really be able to help them out.
Yeah.
So, speaking of help them out, do you think there's anybody other than maybe Lin on this roster who can help the Lakers out in the foreseeable future and maybe stay with his team for a long time?
Yeah. Well, somewhat similar to last year, the Lakers have a lot of people on kind of like expiring deals or deals that have like a team option or player option for next year. So there's a lot in flux potentially. Right. That said, I think I'm not so sure necessarily if Lynn will come back because I think the Lakers as an organization are really focused on keeping cap space open in the next couple of off seasons in order to go after the big name guys, put up that vacancy sign and say, hey, come be the next star Laker player and reap the benefits of that. So I don't know if Lynn's necessarily going to be a long-term guy there, but I obviously we know Julius Randle is. I could see Ed Davis being a guy that they want to keep long-term. Outside of those guys, I don't really know.
Jordan Hill could stay around for a while.
Who?
Jordan Hill might.
Yeah, Hill might stay around for a while. He'll probably get an opportunity, but I think generally speaking, the Lakers are going to want to keep that cap sheet fairly clean for the next couple of off seasons to go after maybe a KD or a Russell Westbrook Yeah. Westbrook's a guy I could really see them going hard after once Westbrook's available.
Absolutely. I would not be surprised to see him in a Laker uniform.
Yeah. Given all the bigs that we've talked about so far, I feel like half of our video so far has been discussing Lakers bigs, either
big dudes,
subtractions or additions. How do you think this big rotation is going to work out when you've got Boozer, the number 7 pick in the draft, Julius Randle, Ed Davis, who we mentioned is going to be a great benefit for them and has already shown pretty well in the preseason so far, Jordan Hill, the Sacred Cow, Robert Sacre, and your boy Ryan Kelly. How is Scott going to manage those minutes? Who's going to get the shaft and who's going to get the bulk of the minutes there?
Yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, I would put money, my lowly $2 that I actually have to my name, I would put money on Robert Sacre and Ryan Kelly being the odd man out.
Yeah.
That's who I'd be putting it on. And I think that's pretty sad because both of those guys can definitely contribute.
Yeah.
But Ryan Kelly, for reasons we'll be discussing further, I don't think Byron Scott, the way he envisions his team playing, fits very well with what Ryan Kelly's skill set is.
Yeah.
And Robert Sacre, while he is, a good player, bringing in a guy like Ed Davis, who can protect the rim as well as doing a lot of the things that Sacre does.
Yeah.
While not really having the touch in the post like Jordan Hill. Jordan Hill's a sneaky good touch around the basket.
Yeah.
I think that's going to result in him losing quite a few minutes. Obviously, they're going to keep him on the roster. He's a big body.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that they do lack when Boozer, Randall, Davis, Jordan Hill. Jordan Hill's not little, but he's not exactly like, a big 7 foot, 260 pounder dude.
Yeah.
Like Robert Sacre is. So I think Robert Sacre will get some minutes. Ryan Kelly probably isn't even on the playing roster for a lot of the time. I would see him probably on the end of the bench and maybe even out of the rotation, which is pretty sad because he's a damn good player, but I just don't think his skill set fits in with what they're trying to do, and that he's a 3-point shooter first and foremost, and Byron Scott is specifically trying to reduce their 3-point attempts, which is what we're going to talk about in the next question.
Yes, great transition. So far we've seen Byron Scott mention, and he hasn't really gone out of his way and said this is because we're trying to distance ourselves from D'Antoni, who got a lot of vitriol in L.A. the last
But he's trying
years.
to distance himself from D'Antoni.
But this is them trying to distance themselves from D'Antoni. That Byron really wants them to attack the rim more and to improve that shots at the rim issue that they had, and in doing so to kind of ease back on the throttle on the 3-point shots. So how do you think the Lakers are going to fare offensively this season, considering Byron Scott's kind of somewhat resistant and trying to taper back their 3-point shooting?
They're going to struggle. I'm not a big fan of this move for a couple of reasons. For one, this is a team with some, even though a lot of their really good 3-point shooters left, they do have a lot of great shooters on this team with guys like Nash, Lynn, who's improving, Ryan Kelly, who's also improving,
Kobe,
Nick Young, who had a really good year. Kobe, I don't really see him as much as the biggest, the best perimeter threat, but he definitely can shoot the 3. So there are players in this team who can do that, and anytime you have that as a weapon in your arsenal, that generates floor spacing, which you can then use to get the dribble penetration into the sorts of close looks that Byron Scott says he wants. Really at the end of the day, if this team isn't shooting, I'm not saying they need to go all Houston Rockets out here, or that they need to play like
Rio Grande Valley Vipers.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was thinking of.
I knew it.
Words out of my mouth. You're like telepathic today, man. At the end of the day, if this team isn't shooting. They only took 3 3-pointers in one of their last preseason games against, I want to say, the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah. They only took 3 of them, which I don't think that carries over into the season. They probably take more than that. But at the end of the day, if this team isn't shooting the 3, I'm wondering how they're going to generate a lot of the spacing necessary to get the looks they need inside.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. So, having said that, it's something we'll keep an eye on, and I highly doubt that they only take 3 3-pointers per game, that they absolutely don't use it.
I think what might occur is something similar to what happened with Denver in Brian Shaw's first year, wherein he wanted to kind of distance himself from the previous coaching staff. And so he kind of pulled back on the throttle a little bit, tried to play a little more half court, and it didn't really work at first. So but later on in the season, he shifted back to that more up-tempo attacking style offense, and it worked better. So I think we might see a similar thing play out where they start the year off kind of not really looking for threes, and once they've gotten to the point where people aren't really thinking about D'Antoni anymore, they start shifting back to shooting maybe not a ton of threes, but more closer to like the league average.
I could see that totally happening.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that we see totally happening, we have a little segment we like to do here called 20-50-80, and it's where we give a 20% likely prediction that we think could happen this year, a prediction that we think is 50% likely to happen, and a prediction that we think is 80% likely to happen.
Yes.
And we just do that so that way we can talk crazy talk, and as well as say things that are actually going to happen.
Yep.
So, Josh, what are your predictions for the Lakers team this year?
So I feel kind of bad saying this, but I think it's only 20% likely that Kobe and Steve Nash both play more than 50 games this year.
Yep.
I think it's 50% likely that we see a return of my shirt, and only with Lakers colors. And
Exactly.
We see Linsanity bloom again in a major media market. For my 80%, I think it's 80% likely that they missed the playoffs in this really tough Western Conference. I would put that normally as a 100%, but if Kobe's really healthy and Lynn gets a lot of opportunities and Ed Davis and Boozer really work well in that pick and roll, I could see them playing maybe not playoff level, but competitive enough where they might be in that 9-10 to 9-10-11 range if everything falls the right way. So 80% likely that they miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you on that. So I think it's only 20% likely that Nick Young has another strong year in terms of scoring efficiency.
Swaggy.
And I'll agree that Swaggy had a really solid year last year in terms of putting the ball in the hole, but it's, pardon me, not at all consistent with his previous performance. If you look at his true shooting percentage for his career, it goes 52, 53, 52, 53, 51, 52, 56.4.
Yeah, contract year.
Yeah. So I don't think he has. I don't think he puts that off again. This could be wrong. The reason I say 20% likely it does happen is maybe in more of an off-ball role.
Yeah.
You know, with Kobe and Lynn in the game, he'll be able to do more spot ups because he's a good shooter.
Yeah.
He is a pretty solid shooter. So I think that if he's operating more in spot ups, it could happen. But ultimately, at the end of the day, his previous performance indicates to me that last year was a statistical anomaly.
I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah. Sorry, Swaggy P fans. Having said that, I think I'm a little higher on this team than most people, actually. I think that it's 50% likely that this team finishes at or above 500. Most people are saying 35 games, 33 games, 34 games.
I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Simmons and Jalen Rose, and we'll check this when they finally do get the Lakers preview up. I wouldn't be surprised if they predict the Lakers to be one of the bottom 3 in the Western Conference.
Yeah, and I ultimately, at the end of the day, this isn't a bad team. I mean, it's not a good team, but I don't think it's that bad. You've got Jeremy Lin.
They're lukewarm.
I'm lukewarm on them.
They're not too hot. They're not too cold.
They're like what you want your hot pocket to be.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want the hot lava, but you don't also want the cold brick.
Exactly. They're right. They are a perfect hot pocket temperature team in terms of how hot I am on them this year.
Yes.
We have ramen noodle all-stars, hot pockets. We're like the struggle food.
Yes, yes.
We're the struggle food basketball show. But in all seriousness, they have Jeremy Lin playing the point, Steve Nash either in front or behind him. Both of those guys are really good point guards, even still.
Yep.
For Nash. The two, you have a capable shot creator in Nick Young. Yeah, he's not a good defender, whatever. He's still a decent shot creator. You have Kobe out there, who's still freaking Kobe. Achilles injury or not, he's going to contribute. It's going to be mostly positive.
He's going to be fearsome on that post.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy to watch. They have Carlos Boozer playing the 4. Carlos Boozer is an underrated power forward. Definitely is still a quality starter in this league. And then at the 5, they could have Ed Davis, or they could have Jordan Hill.
Yep.
Both of those guys are solid, or at least for Hill, a rim deterrent, and an Ed Davis, a quality rim protector.
Yep.
They have an insane amount of big depth. Wing depth and wing defense is always going to be a problem for this team as currently constructed, but that isn't a bad fitting. Those aren't bad fitting pieces in that starting lineup in terms of how the players fit together. It's not that bad.
Yeah. Plus, because of their big surplus, they might be able to make a move for more wing depth later on.
You took my 80, because I think it's 80% likely this team gets rid of at least one big dude.
Might see Ryan Kelly go bye-bye, buddy.
Yeah. It's a shame. Ryan Kelly, could really... I want to see Ryan Kelly and Ed Davis just play together a lot, because that's a really interesting pairing of players.
Yeah.
With, Ryan Kelly taking you outside, Ed Davis taking you inside. Ed Davis maybe making up for a few of Kelly's deficiencies in terms of rim protection. A lot of the players on this roster fit in really interestingly with Ryan Kelly, but ultimately you're right that he probably wind up seeing probably the biggest downturn in terms of opportunity.
Yeah.
So ultimately, at the end of the day, instead of ending our 2014-15 Lakers preview talking about Kobe or Jeremy Lin or Carlos Boozer, we ended it on Ryan Kelly.
And Hot Pockets.
And Hot Pockets. And proper Hot Pocket eating temperature.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this wraps it up pretty well. Josh, what are your thoughts on this team?
Let's see. If you're asking, is this team going to be good? Not likely. That said, I don't think they're going to be god-awful. But I don't think they're going to be, busting down the playoffs door or putting too much fear in opponents this year.
Yeah, the plan for the Lakers right now is 1-year contracts, draft picks, free agency. You saw it this offseason with them trying to go after Melo. It didn't work out. They tried to, they did try to go after some guys. It just didn't really work. Obviously, there was LeBron talk. It never materialized into much of anything. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what this team is trying to do, it seems like they have a pretty clear, cohesive plan in terms of, holy cow, we're the Lakers. We're probably the most prestigious organization in basketball, if not, really close to it. Why not just have free agents are going to want to come here? Plus, we're in LA.
Yep.
It's financially lucrative for players to be here, and we're a huge basketball city, and a lot of basketball players come from California, and there's so many reasons for them to want to build in free agency.
Yep.
So I get what they're getting at. It's, hey, let's get some young guys on some draft picks. Let's keep our roster. Let's keep our roster on a bunch of 1-year contracts. Let's just make a run at free agency. So is this team going to be very good this year? No, probably not. If I'm a Lakers fan, am I okay with that in the short term, knowing that there's an actual plan going on here and that it's very likely to work given that this is the freaking Lakers we're talking about? Yeah. So I think this team is right where it wants to be and right where it needs to be right now in terms of where it has to go. So even if I think this team is bad, I'm still pretty optimistic on them. So, to wrap things up, I think this concludes our 2014-15 Lakers team preview. Any final words?
Hot Pockets.
Hot Pockets!
Yeah.
And with that, I think that wraps up our preview. So leave a thumbs up on the like button if you liked the video. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of our team previews. And feel free to leave a comment saying how you feel the Lakers are going to do this year. And we'll be reading them and replying. And we want to hear what you have to say.
Yep.
So I think that wraps all this up. It's been a blast, guys. Take it easy. Have a good one.
Everybody.
Keep being awesome.